Good morning, and welcome to Cover to Cover Book Beat. I'm your host, Roger Nichols. Our guest today comes to us from one of the most sainted of professions, serving as a librarian and a manager and a whole bunch of other things for 28 years. But as they see in the commercials, when it comes to Irmgarde Brown, that's not all. She is also a motivational speaker, blogger, and Twitterer. She wrote, produced, and acted in a one-woman play that toured for 2 years. She is a widow, the mother of 3 adoptees from Eastern Europe, now grown, and a grandmother of 2, another sainted occupation. She says her personal mission is to inspire meaningful change, build faith in God, and connect people with resources that can make a difference in their lives. To that end, she's added fiction writer to her long list of skills and achievements, and her debut novel, Sister Jane, came out in June. Kirkus Reviews calls it a wise, winning story of a modern-day miracle worker. And we are very pleased to welcome Arthur Irmgarde Brown.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
Before we dive into Sister Jane, I'd like to touch on a couple of those other achievements because they're fascinating to me. Tell me a little bit about the one-person play.
So I had the fortune when I was living in Georgia, I had the opportunity to become an artist in residence, which allowed you to work in a different kind of a school environment, and you had to actually show people your craft. And so at the time I had really entered into my faith walk at that time. And this was really on the bleeding edge of any kind of faith-based theater. And so I decided I would create, in fact, I created 2 one-woman shows and then toured them. And it was very, very successful. The problem was it was just so new that people didn't really want to pay for my work. Oh, you're a lovely volunteer,
Yeah.
And it just became too difficult because it was actually a lot to take it into a church or take it into a space, being that we were just my husband and I.
Okay. What was the subject of the play?
One was called Pente, which was based on the 5 women in the genealogy of Jesus. That was based on all the bad girls. I could relate to that. and so then the next one was called Sing, O Barren Woman, which was about women who could not have children in the Old Testament, and which I also at that time could relate to because I never could have children. And so these were both things that I was able to not only share through theater, but then also there would be opportunities to speak and to talk about how God was operating in my life.
Thank you. And the other thing I wanted to ask about was, this is not your first book, it's your first fiction book, but tell me a little bit about the book that you co-authored, because I think it reveals another aspect of your life.
Yes, Evidence Now Seen. I wish I could tell you that it has actually been published. It was written first and it's at the publisher, but we've had a little bit of a glitch, so it's on hold. However, it is a memoir that I wrote about my 2 good friends who have lived in Zambia for the last 13 or 14 years. They run a children's village there. I got to spend a long periods of time there right after I retired. I first set up a library the first year that I went for 8 weeks. And then the second time we decided that we would work together to create this memoir of their lives and of this amazing children's village, which started out with absolutely nothing. I mean, it was a blank slate, and now they have over 43 buildings, and they serve in the orphanage part, the part for the actual children who live there, about 110. And then they actually have a school that serves almost 500 children locally, as well as a college. It's just amazing what they've done there.
And I think it's great you're writing about it. You let people know the story, and hope that comes
Village
out
of Hope
soon. All right. Well, before we go any farther, we should tell people that Sister Jane is not about a nun, despite the title. However, she has some heavenly gifts, we should say. I want to ask if there's any specific incident or series of incidents that led you to write this particular book.
I wouldn't say an incident, no. Although I was very intrigued, you kind of sometimes play that what if game. Mm-hmm. And so I myself was intrigued by what if someone totally ordinary had absolutely no sense of why she should be special or anything like that, and suddenly gets one of these gifts that, according to the Bible and according to a lot of people in church, that they believe in. What would happen though if it's an ordinary person? And so it was really great fun to kind of brainstorm all of the results and the reactions and what would happen in that situation.
Right, and the gift is the gift of healing, and
Correct.
through prayer. And she's very careful all the way through to say, "It's not me. I'm just the conduit that it's acting through." And I think that's a very nice touch that you put that in.
Thank you. It would have been easy to kind of take the tack of saying, okay, now she has this gift and she's going to, become super concerned about the power of it, and she's going to like go bad. This is like the normal way that those things go oftentimes in a book. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go against that and let it to be more about what happens if she learns more about herself, and she makes a lot of self-discoveries, and then let the people around her are the ones who really kind of go belly up in terms of how they react to her.
One of the things that I find most fascinating is the way people react to her is more about them than it is about her.
Good
about,
point.
about their own feelings and prejudices, because we won't give away a whole lot of the plot, but I will say a few things about it. One of the things that what happens is that she is walking down the street, and the stray cat has kind of adopted her, runs into the traffic and is hit, and she goes and prays over it and gets up and walks away. And after that, she discovers the gift, and the cat hangs around and she names it Miracle. And I'm thinking, usually the symbol is a white dove, but isn't this a kind of a spiritual symbol?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think that, well, I guess because I have cats, and, all I can tell you is that from the cover of the book, whenever people see the cat, they immediately are drawn to it. And so I think that pets and animals and beloved animals really have an important part to play in our peace, our personal peace. And so that's just how it came about. And also I knew I'd be able to play on the fears of people, because sometimes cats are familiars to someone who perhaps is operating in the dark arts. And so I knew that there would be a play there.
Yeah. Yes, in fact, I hadn't thought about that aspect of it, but yes, that is true. The reaction that she gets from the people around her really interesting. It's disbelief, anger in some people. The people she ends up with picketers. That's probably not a secret to give away, but also they want to. Her family wants to put her in a nursing home because they think that she's having some kind of problem. So, how how many false starts did you make? It flows so beautifully. Is this something was you rewritten and rewritten, or did it just come out? It's all at once.
Well, there's this difference between different kinds of authors. There's the pantser, which are the people who write by the seat of their pants. And then there's the outliner. And so I started out my writing life when I really got serious about trying to write fiction with NaNoWriMo, which is that National Novel Writing Month. And so I was doing a lot of pantser writing, but I found the story would go skew off into the netherworld. And so I did actually outline this story with a combination of knowing that things would kind of come out of it. I didn't have any what I would call false starts. If anything, I so love working with characters. Characters are my favorite part. I'm sure that's my theater background. And so what ends up happening is that I end up bringing in, more characters and giving them fuller and fuller lives. And so the book gets to be very long. And so I really had to make some harsh choices. And as they say, there were quite a few on the cutting room floor, just like a movie.
Well, the ones that survived are anything but cardboard. That's one of the real delights in this book. And there's kind of I don't know, even though there's tension in parts of it, there's a kind of a peaceful feeling through the whole book. I found that really interesting, how you maintained that aspect.
That's an interesting comment. No one has made that before. Thank you.
I also note that it begins on Ash Wednesday and ends on Easter, though not Easter in the same year.
Right.
And I'm sure that's a conscious story arc on your part as well.
Well, I really wanted some kind of a way to compress it into a certain number of days, and that was sort of a convenient thing. Now, I think some people have taken to heart some of the headings, and thinking that there's some super secret hidden meaning. It really isn't that secret. It was a way for me to just keep track of what's going on and what the time frame would be and how quickly things were moving. I mean, I think in today's world, once something goes viral, it it just explodes. And that's, I wanted that feeling through those 40 days. Interestingly enough, I'm actually writing a little companion piece to Sister Jane, because people have been asking for a sequel and I'm not quite ready for that. But I am writing a little companion piece that will actually represent literally the last 40 days before the end of the book.
Oh,
um,
okay.
so that'll be a little piece that I will give to people who join my mailing list. So it'll be a little bonus piece.
Okay, and as long as you mentioned it, how do people join that mailing list?
Right on my website, which is irmgardebrown.com. So I guess you really have to learn how to spell my name, IRMGARDE Brown.com.
Right, it's a fascinating name. It's Latvian, German, both.
The name is, the history of the name is German, because my mother was half German, but she added an E to the end, which Latvianizes it, because my parents are from the small country of Latvia.
And we're glad they came here.
Thank you. Me too. They could have ended up in Australia. I always wonder who I would be had they gone that direction.
Probably call you Sheila then, but that's a whole nother thing. Um, Names are important, and in this particularly so. And I thought something rang a bell, so I looked up Jane, which means God is gracious, and or merciful, depending on which of the Talmud you happen to look at. Um, what are the other ones? And this is an interesting one. And her daughter Maddie, I had to go through this one, is a derivative of Madison or Madeline, and Madeline is an English form of Magdalene. So I don't know if that was conscious as well, but it's the symbolism is there if you look for it.
Yeah, I love the names. I don't know if I went that far with the Maddie name. However, if you'll notice, that whole family, they all have the M names, so
Mm-hmm.
that was sort of a statement to that kind of thinking that people go through in which they do that. But I did very consciously name Jane. Yes, you caught me on that one.
It's not a catch. It's an added bonus, I think, because again, it makes for we people who are the reviewers and critics and whatnot, we love what we call Easter eggs hidden in movies and whatnot, but
Right.
also they can be hidden like that as well. The lots of things. Um, what are the I love this. One reviewer on Amazon said, "There's no judgment here, just a lot to think about in a very entertaining way." That was rather well put, and you have given us a lot to think about in how does society treat people who a discover a gift when they're older, b the gift is somewhat opposite the mainstream view, and I got to believe that that was a conscious intention on your part.
Absolutely. Definitely, I'm very interested in how people become invisible in the second half of their lives, men and women, actually, in many, many ways. And so that was a very important to me. And the fact that she had, for most of her life, been invisible, and not just in the second half, but she had been invisible all along and needed to come into herself. And so that was a very key point. But the second piece of it, in terms of our society, you see, I actually believe that everyone really does have a gift. I mean, we have all kinds of things that we can do, and oftentimes we don't act on those gifts, either because of societal pressure or because of our families or because of this sort of habitual way of going through life. And so we have to be shaken up sometimes. And so that's very much on my heart. I think everybody needs to be willing to just jump in, just really jump in and to see what life has for us, because the whole story, life is short and all of that. And then certainly as we get into this time of year, this time of our lives, we can give up and say there's nothing yet more to be done. I'm done. And I refuse to do that. I want to I want to explode and see what else can happen.
Which is a perfect lead in to the comment that you jumped out of an airplane. It wasn't on fire voluntarily on your
Yes,
70th birthday or near that.
that's no, yeah, right, very, very close to that. Yeah, I was wanted to do something monumental. Of course, the book was pretty monumental in itself. That's a dream come true. But I wanted to really mark that time because I wanted to be able to say that this is, you ain't seen nothing yet kind of thing, that this is just the beginning. I also wanted to face my fear. I am terribly afraid of heights. And I thought, I'm going to just really face this thing. And it was amazing because once I got up there, I was hooked to a very hunky Welshman. So there was nothing wrong with that part. And, and you just kind of roll out of the airplane. And I thought I'd be like flailing around, but instead it was a very solid feeling. And it was very spiritual as a result of that. And I really, really liked it. So, I would encourage everyone to try it. It was
Okay.
excellent. I would do it again.
Okay. And that also reminds me, you're talking about fighting, jumping. I think you said at one point that, let's see if I can find the quote, that after you became a widow, it changed your life positively, which is not the usual reaction.
Well, I think the reason, because first of all, my faith played a very important part. I cannot, downplay that in that
Mm.
particular case. A lot of people, because my husband died very suddenly, they call him a widow maker, which I hate that kind of
Yeah.
phrase, but it's true. He was a very healthy man, and it was a shock to everyone, including the doctors. But so it's very surreal when that happens. But a lot of people said, aren't you going to be angry at God and blah, blah? And I was like, but my faith tells me that this is what I've been given. This is what my life now is. And so I knew that my process had to be to integrate what this means for me. And so I mean, don't get me wrong, the first 2 years were difficult. I mean, you're in a terrible fog. And I work with widows now. I'm part of a widows group, to help people navigate these years after we lose our beloved husbands or wives. But the thing is it is about integration, and it is about understanding that you will always have this as part of your life. Any sorrowful thing that happens is part of our lives. And now we are to take what we learn from that and move into the next level. And so out of that joy joy because I knew that, oh, okay, I'm going to take all these things I learned from being married for so long and now use it in a variety of different ways. I mean, if it weren't for my husband, I never would have gone to Africa. I mean, he was the guy. When he first said, oh, I'm going to go to Africa, I said, oh, Jesus would have to sit on my bed, tell me to go to Africa. I'd had no interest. And here I went, and it was extraordinary.
Mhm. Yeah, we don't know what's coming, and that's a good thing in many ways. In many
Right.
ways. There's some quotes. When I read, I take notes, and there's some things I really, really. There was a line in here that just. See if I can find that one real quickly. Naturally, I took the notes. Can I find it? No, when I really need to look at it. Um, oh yeah, it's this. And this one of your characters responds to the news about these things and says, "Definite anomalies present themselves in the reality structures we're used to observing." I love that. That is academic speech for we don't know what the heck's going on here.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
You, I was going to ask you about it with your theatrical background. Do you find yourself thinking in accents or different regionalisms or different styles?
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Hmm.
I mean, I have to say it's either a movie or a play in my head, and so the challenge is to, communicate it, through
Hmm.
the written word. And that's what I'm learning, to be better at. But yes, it definitely was going on in my head, and I see the people and they become very close to me, and, even the bad guys,
Hmm.
so that
Um,
absolutely is happening.
yeah, and we will say, without spoiling anything, that some bad people show up and do some bad things,
Yes, they
but also
do.
some good people show up and do some good things. So, and it's not an ending where everybody gets run over by a truck. So just so you know, I will say that much. The rest of it,
Okay.
it's all very well. Um, was another quote that I had. Oh, this is she, at one point when she's had enough of some of the negativism, and she says, she wore her beige raincoat and fold-up rain hat. She carried her reusable faint green bag and drove to the grocery store to pick up 3 bunches of cheap flowers. She was on a mission for God. She'd had it with asking for advice. She was on her own. That is one of those character-making moments that you see, particularly since before she's been so timorous in all of this.
Exactly, exactly. But she's still, it's so funny because for a long time in a variety of different places, I try to kind of indicate the kind of clothes that she wears because she's really, she's so get a little bit of a fuddy-duddy, on the
Mm-hmm.
front end. And it takes her a lot, I mean, well, even towards the back end, but she just, it has not really allowed herself to be pretty or to be beautiful or to be, and so everyone has always told her what to be. And so that's why it was so important as she's moving through this whole gift and what it means, that she just felt like she had to, okay, I'm just going to do this, I'm going to do it and see what happens. Now, of course, it kind of blows up and that's sort of important for her to see, but she does at least start taking her own steps. She's moving forward.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about Nick, the character who is the son-in-law, and kind of a no good Nick at part.
Well, it's funny because when I talk to people, I get to do a lot of book clubs. In fact, I'm doing one tonight. It's pretty fun, to be able to sit and talk to people who also love reading books and
Mm-hmm.
ask questions just like that. What about Nick?
Yeah.
And the truth is most people like Nick. And I've had also people say, oh, I know Nick. I have a Nick in my life. And I think that was the key here is that Nick is someone who has wanted something all of his life, but never understood, never made the connection between what he had to do to get there. He always wanted it to be a shortcut. He would try this, he would try this, he would try this, waiting for to catch the golden ring.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of understanding that it's not like that. And so as a result, when he jumps into something, he's so enthusiastic and, he got so excited about the fact that Sister Jane can do this. And he was exposed to, I mean, he's the one who actually gave her the name. He
Mm-hmm.
gives her the name Sister
Yeah.
Jane because he's planning on, making some money from her notoriety, but he is so enthusiastic and in a way he's lovable that way. He's just a goofball, makes a
Yeah.
lot of mistakes.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very interesting in that. Another aspect of it is that the fact that the church she goes to is divided on it. Some of the people are instantly convinced, others are instantly saying this can't be, including her own pastor. So, and then you get involved with people, each with their own motives, each with their own angles, and it gets very complicated toward the end, but very fun.
Well, I've been to a lot of different churches. I've been a Christian over 40 years, and I have been through that. I went through the charismatic movement and the dancing and I mean, I've been through all of that, been there, done that. I've been in traditional churches. I'm in a more very quiet kind of church now. It's a whole different world, but I've been there. And so I felt that because I've been there, I really could speak to it. I could really maybe even dig a little bit at some of the things that I have seen over the years in all of those churches, whether they be the very enthusiastic ones or the more laid back ones.
Yeah, and there's a lot of concern in this, getting the proper sound system and things like that. They don't necessarily relate to religion, but do rate for the presentation of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, is there anything we haven't touched on we want to make sure that people get a chance to listen to?
No, I think we covered a lot of things. I just want to point out again how I hope that one person you said read, they thought the book was entertaining. And so that's important to me. I want people to laugh. I mean, when people, contact me and say, oh my gosh, I laughed out loud. And I'm like, yay. I mean, I want people to laugh as well as to think. And if I can put always put those two things together, I feel very successful as a writer, because I believe it's important that we enjoy what we're reading. Been a librarian. I was a librarian for 28 years. I understand about people that read because they want to have an experience. And if I can provide them with an experience in which they think about it later, or they want to ask questions, or they want to talk with people about it, that's great. But also if they just laugh and smile and connect with what is written there. Oh, I know this. I remember that. Or if they live in a smaller town, let's say, maybe they'll connect with some of the small town aspects to it. Needless to say, people who I know here in town, they recognize parts of the town and they're like thrilled, that they can see a little bit of our own community. So all of those things, if you can connect people and to the words, to the feeling, then I am feeling wonderful. I hope I can keep doing that. I mean, I'm in the middle of finishing another book. If those things keep going and I'm successful, I will be very, very happy.
Oh, indeed. Well, let's run through all your blog, your website, etc., and get all the contact information for folks.
So irmgardebrown.com. There's a blog that's directly related to my writing called to Contextual Moments. That's actually part of the website. There are links to a couple of other blogs that I've done. They're not as active now, only because my emphasis right now has to be on the promoting my books. But I do have other blogs out there. If you want to reach me on Twitter or Instagram or any of those things, it's always Irm Brown or Irm_Brown. I never can remember which is which. But if you put in Irmgarde Brown, you'll usually find me, and of course with Sister Jane. And my books are available on all the online places. I was so surprised. I didn't realize when I had the title that there's actually a character in some kind of fantastical animal book that's a series, and so you have to kind of scroll through the animal books, but I am in there as Sister Jane and Irmgarde Brown, but all the majors, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, Amazon, I'm there. And of course I am willing to zoom into book clubs or any kind of performances in order to talk about the book or talk about writing.
Thank you so much. You've been very gracious with your time and very gracious with your writing as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.